Hello, everybody, and welcome out to today's eLearning Brothers webinar. My name is Thomas, and today we are going to be talking about thinking outside the box with animated graphics in Camtasia 2019. Just as a reminder, today's webinar will be recorded, so if you are looking to get a hold of that after the fact or are watching this after the fact, you will have known that it was recorded. But don't worry about it. We'll make sure that you get a copy of it in case you need it. If you have any questions during today's webinar, I am manning the questions panel over here. We'll be happy to answer any of the questions as they come up. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can during the webinar, but in case we can't, we'll do our best to continue the conversation afterwards in our webinar recap. Today we have with us Andrew Townsend, who is our video specialist and the person who is normally in my seat, but he is going to be teaching us a little bit about today's topic. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and thanks, Andrew, for heading this up. Without any other things, I think we'll just go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Thomas.
Yeah.
I will change this so you guys are seeing my screen. So this is Camtasia 2019. Looks very much like Camtasia 9. They mostly made some small improvements. Oh, actually the previous version was Camtasia 2018. It looks very similar to that one. The difference with 9 to 18 and 19 is the separation of the library from the media section in this ribbon here. All right, so what we're going to be talking about today is thinking a little bit more creatively when it comes to getting your graphics animated onto your screen. So for example, let's just dive right in. If I am coming through the library and I'm thinking, you know what, I need a map in my video, some sort of map. I can come to the eLearning Brothers asset library, come to the stock asset library, images and graphics, and let's search here for a map, but not any map. Let's look for one of a city, and we want it to have what are those called? Way markers or markers. We'll just put marker. See, map of city with marker. And as this searches up, okay, there's quite a few different images here. I only want illustrations, so I will unselect photos. And let's see what we've got here. All right, so there's tons of them. There's some that lie down, some that are flat. We can grab this one that's lying down a little bit. I really like it, and now we have a choice. We can grab the EPS or the PNG. Now, Camtasia doesn't take EPS, so the natural choice is PNG, so we can download that and then pull it into Camtasia. You know what? I'm realizing that I pre-downloaded a different one, so we'll pull this one into Camtasia, stick it here on the screen. We're going to change the project settings to 1080, and here is our map, and our options for animating it on the screen are to pull a regular transition, to fade it on and off. It'll look a little jumpy to you guys. GoToWebinar doesn't capture it super fast, so there it is, just fading on and off. Or if we don't like that, we can maybe grab a behavior and say, you know what, how about you fly in? And here's what this looks like. It comes in like that and then flies out in a similar way. That could be neat. We can also change that behavior to be a drift, perhaps. It's kind of neat. Flies away. But if we instead were to grab the EPS and download that and then open it in software like Illustrator. Let's pull that same one in that I downloaded earlier, as it takes a couple days to open. Okay, we can now make adjustments to this file in how it is read in Camtasia. For example, if I want this item right here, this little way marker, to be animated by itself, I can select it, right-click on it, say export, and now it's going to see export as PNG. But you'll also see up here it says export selection. So I could export just that item. And as you can see here, it's exporting just that item as a transparent PNG. So I can use that anywhere just by itself. So let's do that with the other image that I was building. So here's just the regular PNG, but I sent a couple links over to our director of product and design, Nick Brown, and said, hey, can you separate this into all of its separate parts, because he does it much faster than me, so that I can animate these in Camtasia. So he gave me all of the parts, and here they are. As I'm going to build this to be animated, I'm going to build it out in its completion as if it was just this image. So the first layer is going to be this background, and it's not that big, but we'll leave it that big for now, sure. The next layer is going to be the city, let's see, these streets, I think they're next. We'll put it right up here. Yep, and that's naturally lining up. And then the bigger streets go on top of that. Let's put, below that, I'll make this a little bigger on the timeline. Below any of the streets, let's put in the parks and other things onto the city. And it doesn't look like that is lining up. So we're going to highlight all of these, make sure they're scaled to 100. Yeah, this one's scaled to 99. Let's go 100. Up in the properties ribbon on the right side. And is that upside down? Let's take a look. Oh, no, but it is off. So this actually will slide over. It lines up with the left wall in this map. There, so now stuff is sitting where it's supposed to. And I think that's all I need aside from the way markers as I'm comparing these. Yep, that looks right. So let's scale these all down. I'm going to hold down Control as I drag this down so they all scale down together. It looks like those parks will need to be moved again. So slide them right onto the edge there. Great, so now I have my basic map. Now we're going to be placing these waypoints, these way markers, where they need to go. Now they don't need to go exactly where they were in the original. It kind of depends on what my purpose is, what my hopes are here, but we'll know green top right, purple kind of in the middle, red down at the bottom, and let's get putting these on it. So green up here, purple maybe down right here, red on this building. I remember that blue was in here somewhere, and black is at this building. Now I set these all to 64.8 in size, so I'm going to highlight my way markers and also set those to 64.8 in size so they kind of match, and I can move those all together back into kind of where they go. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Not too far off from the, ooh, did I nail that? Not too far off at all from the original. Looks like this red one was down here. Okay, so now that I have that, I can get rid of my reference original. We're going to move all of these back at the beginning, and now I need to make some choices. So personally, I don't care much about the map bits coming onto the screen separately, especially because that's going to take a lot of time as they animate on separately, but I do care about the waypoints. So I'm going to move all my waypoints out of the way to the side a bit and come into this map. And to make it so I can edit it easily and not lose its cohesion, I'm going to right click and group these together. So no matter what I do with this, all of them are now going to move together. Now let's have it spin on. So I'm going to come into animations. It defaults to zoom and pan. We'll come to animations, grab a custom animation. And we want it to end there in the middle. So I'll come to the beginning of that animation. We'll want it to start over here. And just for kicks and giggles, let's also make it start rotated backwards a couple of times. That way, as it comes on, we'll go nice and slow, frame by frame. This is what it will look like as it comes on. I think I had it spinning a few too many times. Looks like I had to go 720 degrees, so let's start that over and just have it flip once. Like that. And now as it comes on, you can see it spinning and then it lands there. That doesn't look too bad. So we'll drag that so it's at the beginning, rolls on, and then as soon as that's done rolling on, we'll have these waypoints start to pop up. The order that I put them on is probably fine by me. We're going to, you've noticed I've highlighted all of them. We come to behaviors. The behavior I want them to kind of grow and pop up and spring, kind of like that. So I think we'll use scale, and I'll drag it down, and since I have them all selected, it's going to apply the scale behavior to all of them. See, it says behavior added, and as I edit the behavior with them all selected, it's going to edit that same behavior to be the same on all of them. So we'll have them grow, we'll have them spring. What does that tension look like as I push play here? They're kind of a gentle bounce. If I increase the spring, they don't bounce really at all. So I'm going to loosen the tension so they, yeah, there we go. That bounced nice and big. We'll go slow for GoToWebinar going, yeah, they bounce a couple times before they get to their rest. Now I don't want them all to kind of be exactly the same. I'd like them to come on kind of in a cascading way. So I will move all of them except the green one over a little. And I'm going to hold down Control so that it doesn't try to auto lock to anything. Holding down the Control button as I move that, I'm going to highlight all of them but the purple one and move that over about the same, then all but the red and move that over, and then just the black one and move that over. And now that I've done that, this is what it looks like. So it's going to animate onto the screen, and those are all going to pop up in a cascading fashion. And that looks way better, way more exciting than just having one image pop up. I could expand on this if I wanted to, come into annotations and label each one if I really wanted to. We'll call this, I don't know, we'll say American Fork, where eLearning Brothers is located, which doesn't actually even make sense on account of that's a city and this is clearly a building. Anyway, but yeah, you could label each of these on either side and have those animate in. They could even slide out from that waypoint, and I'll show you a little bit more how to do that in another demo. But now that we've gone this far, do we have any questions, any thoughts?
Yeah, just one question came in kind of in the middle of that. More just kind of wondering about the shortcut key or hotkey for scaling that you're using, and specifically for the Mac, but we're both right now PC users, and so
yes,
we could probably intuit a little bit what the Mac one is based on what the PC one is. So what is it that you kind of use to quickly do that scaling that you were doing a little bit earlier?
Okay, so if I wanted this map to be larger or smaller, I'm going to hold down the Control key, and what that does is it keeps its ratio, and it keeps the center point in the exact same spot. So as I'm growing or shrinking this, that center point is staying where it goes, but it's also keeping its ratio. Now, if I didn't want that center point to stay, I would hold down Shift, and it's going to grab by the opposite corner that I grabbed. That's where it will anchor.
Yeah.
And it'll do the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Now, there isn't any cool hotkeys like in Adobe products where if you can hit Control plus or minus.
Right.
You can scroll. If I wanted to look closer, I can just simply scroll in or scroll out. Hold down the space bar to click and drag that around if I wanted to. But there's nothing. If I want to reset it to just fitting in the frame, I have to come up here and click Fit.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's mostly just for actually zooming in on the canvas itself,
It's
not for actually scaling the item itself. So yeah, that's probably the same, I would assume, on a Mac as well, just the Control and Shift for doing that kind of stuff. The other question that we had was just asking about whether or not you changed the playback speed for any of these items, and I don't believe you did.
No, so these are all images, PNGs, so they don't have a speed. The speed of animation, so like the speed of this rotation was a choice of how many times it was twisted up in its starting position. I can make that go much slower or faster by changing the length of the animation. So if we make it way longer, this is what it looks like as it comes out. Doesn't look too bad. Don't think that's a bad thing.
Huh.
Here's another quick general practice thing though with video. Now that this is up on the screen, let's make sure that map comes here. Animating out, we have a choice. We can have it reverse everything, which would take this long to undo. Let's see, if I highlight this, it says it's 2.2 seconds, so that's quite a bit to animate out. General practice, on its way out, give it way less attention, way less, not finesse, but way less attention. So I'll make these all so they go out at the same time, and then instead of having it spin out, the map spinning out, we'll just stick a simple animation custom and we'll just have it come straight down. So this way you're not spending a ton of time trying to undo what you just built. Your audience won't be as impressed as you hoped they will be. So yeah, if it pops on, it sits there for however long we want, they all go away and it slides down much faster, and it feels better.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so one other question is, what kind of animation options are there that don't require Illustrator? At least from kind of what I understand, the only reason we pulled Illustrator into this was to break up an EPS file, which is really what Illustrator is needed for. There are other ways that you can get all of these individual elements, but they kind of require different file types, like an SVG, tools. Or if you've just got separate PNGs to start with, you can use any of these animation options with that. Is that right?
Yes. So as long as they are separate PNGs, you can do whatever you want with these. The reason I brought in EPS is because if you download those are available. Our stock asset library has tons of those, EPS and PNG. But the PNG, they're all stuck together, and the EPS allows you to break it up and separate it. Now, what I've got here on the screen is our icon library. If you were to come in, let's grab this cat cage and see what we've got here. We have the option to download it as an SVG and an EPS, as well as PDF and PNG. If I was to grab this one and pull it as an SVG and then pull that into PowerPoint, I would have options to do kind of the same stuff, to find each piece, break it up, separate it, and save it out if I wanted to. And there's other tools as well that can speak the language of SVG. EPS, as far as I know, pretty much Illustrator.
There are probably some lesser known programs that can also work with EPSs, but I mean the most likely one is going to be Illustrator, that I think people come around. But honestly, like Google searching will potentially turn up some others.
Sure. I also want to point out our director of product and design, Nick. When I showed him these, he says that's really cool, but can't you do something with the streets or those highway markers or the parks to make them animate on cool? And I said, yeah, you totally can. I just don't want to, because I think that's not the focus. But depending on what your focus is, every single layer can be animated separately.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to, I didn't have to group these, or even in the group I can edit these so they animate differently, each separate layer.
We've actually got a couple of suggestions from folks in chat right now. It looks like Mark is suggesting that maybe Snagit Editor might be able to break up an EPS with the Magic Wand tool. So that's something worth trying, especially since that's kind of within the whole TechSmith family of products.
Yeah.
And then I have Luke, who mentioned Inkscape is an open source freeware program that works a little bit like Illustrator. So that might be another option if you don't have access to Illustrator, but you're still looking to break up some EPS files. So give those a shot, and hopefully those will work out well for you.
Great ideas. Thank you for sharing, everybody. All right, we're going to look at another one. I've got 3 of these to show you. All of them kind of animate in different ways, just to try to get you thinking and creatively building these new ideas. So here is the default image. If I was to download it as a PNG, it says security real estate. What an interesting stock company. But it's got this cool crest. It's got a house. Not the text I want, so no matter what, I would probably end up, even if I was using this just as the PNG, I'd probably crop that section out using that crop tool there, and get this here. I'm also not interested in the house today, so imagine that's what we're going to build is not going to include the house. So again, I had Nick Brown go ahead and break this down into separate pieces, and he didn't break down every single line. So like this little line in here is not broken down. Instead, the entire center piece is all one, and that's fine. I'm sure he could have broken it down even more, but he didn't, because I didn't ask him to. All right, so let's start bringing those pieces in. We'll start with the bottom here and get that centered. We'll get the top of it as well and put that.
I was just chuckling for a little bit because Lori said that it looks like Yoda, and
It does, just like this.
I felt like that needed to be mentioned.
We can build Yoda. I had not even thought of that. There you go. Backwards speaking, we can begin. All right, then let's put in the interior here. I'm going to have to use my arrow keys to move those around to be a little exact. Here's the bottom. I'll use arrow keys again to put that where it needs to go. Right in there. Looks like this need to come, I gotta look at the original again. I'm just gonna pull it up on my screen here on the side. Sorry everybody, you won't be able to see it. And I'm gonna zoom in just using the wheel to get this where it needs to go. So we'll arrow key it up to there, arrow key this down. And again, making sure these are all sized at 100 so they fit correctly. Okay, now let's bring in these blue wings, so to speak. Goes about there. This blue wing goes about here. And it'll use guides to help for a little bit. They're not going to be perfect in every way, though. Okay, and then this piece of grass can go right there. And then this piece of grass on this side. No judging. Doing it fast under pressure, y'all. And then this one. Go here. There. All right, now we'll scale it back to fit. Okay, I built the whole thing. Any thoughts, questions on this?
No, but there are people silently judging you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, let's bring this bottom one up. Now I'm self-conscious. We're gonna get a little more meticulous. Let's highlight all three of these items so they can move back up into place. There we go. That looks correct. All right, so what I want to do, since this is a shield, is I'm thinking I want it to be a little more grand in its entrance. So it's going to come together and get compiled, and when it lands, it's going to shake a little bit, you know, and you guys won't be able to hear anything, so I'm not even going to bother. But you could add like a boom kind of sound or some sound effect. And then we'll have the blue parts. They kind of look sci-fi techy, so we'll have the blue parts kind of hum in to full strength. So let's build that out. Let's grab all of these green pieces, these two, and we'll have them come in earlier. So move them over here. So it's just them. And you know what? These blue wings, we'll bring them in as well. Now I do want them all to animate together and get together at the same time. So I'm going to highlight all four of them, come into my animations, drag a custom animation onto them. Highlight all of these. I put it down a little too early. I'm going to put it over here so you have some space for starting. All right, so this first blue piece is the left blue piece. We're just going to have it start off the screen to the left. Have this one start off the screen to the right. Again, using the arrow keys to move these around. This is the top bit. We'll put it up above the screen. The bottom bit, we'll put it down below. Okay, so now I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select all of the animations together and drag them to the beginning. And now here's how they come in. The default animation for my animations is the exponential in and out. It says auto, but again, that's because that's what I have it set in my settings. Auto is exponential in and out, and I don't think that looks too bad. If we were to switch that to linear instead, it would look like this. And you know what? I'll try to make it a little bigger for you. Look like this. Just smoothly moves in. And if we were to try, we'll try one more. We'll do bounce. It comes in and bounces like that. Not really what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to set it back to auto. Now I said that when they get together, I want them to shake and vibrate a little bit like they're a big deal. So I'm going to make that easier, I don't need them to be separate ever again. So I'm going to, now that they're all highlighted, hit the S key or split key, and then select all four of those items again, right click and hit group. So now any edit I make, it will keep them all together, and that's going to make it a little bit easier as I'm making a few more complex animated choices here. I'm going to zoom in really close. We're going to put a custom animation here. And for here, we're going to start with it going just down and to the left a little bit. But I do want that to be quick, so I'm going to shorten it a lot. Another custom animation. We're going to have this time it's going to move up and to the right a touch. But again, I want that to be really, really fast, so we'll shorten it quite a bit. and then we'll have it animate again back to just the center point, which will be right there. I'll have that be really short. Now, these are short enough that if I hit play and it's capturing at only 5 to 10 frames per second, you're not going to see it. So I'm going to arrow key it kind of fast. You can kind of see that as soon as they hit, they begin to move together in that pattern. I'll play it quick for myself. Okay, it doesn't look great, but it's close. Again, with more finesse, I can make that look better. It looks like I just didn't go up and to the right enough based on where it needed to land. Oh, that's why, because I centered the group as opposed to my entire shape. So I'm just going to bring that ending landing point back to where it should be to line up with my other items. Right there. Now let's see how that looks. A little better. Yep, and with a sound effect, that will look really cool. Boom, as it shakes a little. Okay, any questions at what I've done so far here?
Yeah, so Jennifer actually just had a question asking about what the split key was, the shortcut key that you were using for that.
Yep, I used it's just the S key. So you don't have to reach over here and hit the split button.
You can also be reassured that people's faith in you has been restored, so everything's good there, and you've got a couple of people defending your honor. But on a more serious question note, Ryan was actually wondering whether or not you can maybe go over some of the ways that you could take these sorts of things and export them from Camtasia once you're actually done. Like, what are maybe some of the best ways to do something like that?
Sure. So these are all as if I was building and developing in Camtasia, and my end goal was a video project from Camtasia. If I wanted to try to make these, like if I wanted to pull just this cool graphic and animate it out for like storylines, say, I guess there's a couple ways I could do it. You can export stuff as GIFs. However, those aren't very editable. I could export this map one with some color that isn't present as the fill background, and then try to key out the back when you put it on top of something else. But again, these are being built and designed here. The easiest way would just be exporting it for a video project. The last thing that we'll build after this one will be a lower thirds kind of graphic animation that you would definitely just use within video.
Within video, yeah. And something like a lower thirds, you might want it to be like, pretty repeatable, I would suppose. And so are there other export options that kind of keep it within kind of like good use in Camtasia?
Yes. So if I'm going to be coming back to this map often, like maybe I'm going to be coming to different points. So if I've got this bullet is Camtasia, this bullet is storyline, this bullet is Lectora, this bullet's Captivate, this bullet is, I don't know, who was somebody we had ELBX? Domino,
Claro, Flow.
Sure. Yeah, sure, whatever. But I'm going to be coming back to this, so we're going to visit this map over and over and over again. I can select all of the items that are there together, right-click, select Add to Library, and it's going to ask me what I want to name this group and which library I want to add. So I have a Camtasia 9.1, a default, and an eLearning Brothers library. It's another cool thing about the Camtasia 2018 and up is you have this cool library. So you can create a new library that could be by project if you wanted to. You can manage your libraries, you can rename it, you can delete it, you can even export it. If I have a whole library for one course, but I know somebody else is going to be doing my project edits, I can export that library and send it over to them before they even get into it to make sure that they have everything that they need.
Yeah, and I know we've done other webinars specifically on this topic too. So that would actually probably be a really good idea, heading over to our blog, looking through our webinar archive of some of the previous webinars that we've done for Camtasia. We'll have like much more detail on this kind of a thing.
Yep, lots of really cool stuff there. Any others before we jump into this? Okay,
no, seems good.
So now I want this blue section to come in and glow in a couple of times before it really sets in. So I'm going to split it up into some pieces. And you know what? I'm just going to group them as well, just to make it a little easier. Group. Nope, change my mind. Not grouping them. We're going to keep them separate, and I'll group them later. All right, so the first section of them glowing on and off will be about this long. The second section will make it a little bit longer right here, and then the third it'll stay on the screen. I'm going to highlight all 6 of those now made sections so that the behavior that I put on them is the same. And we're going to say it's just going to be a fade. Just going to do a regular old fade. Drag that fade on, come into the behavior modifications, properties. Linear is fine. During, none. I don't want it to do anything. Out, we'll fade out linear as well. So this is what that looks like. We'll try to unselect it. So it'll fade on and back off, and then fade on and then back off, but it'll take a little bit longer. And then the last time it will fade on, and you'll notice it's a little slower that second time because it uses a percentage of the time that the items on the screen. But the last time it fades on, I want it to fade on with all of the green. So I'm actually going to select this little show effects button, and here you can see the fade behavior. I'll right click on it, copy selected effects, highlight these 3 green ones that don't have any effects, right click and paste effects, and now they will fade on and off the same as the below one. I'll drag the background out so it takes a little bit longer. So here's what that looks like. Now the whole thing. Again, I'm going to use the caret, which is the caret keys, which is the comma and the period on the keyboard to go a little bit slower, so GoToWebinar can catch it. Slides on, it's got that little boom, fades on, a little longer, and then it all fades on together. And this would be a really cool one for the title of a course or introducing a person or a theme. And then those behaviors, because I had them have an out, they'll fade out together. And again, following the same rule for exits, we're going to try to get the entire thing to fade out at the same time. So we'll come to transitions, we'll stick a fade on the end of this, but we got to see when that starts to fade out of the center. It looks like it lined up by default. Pretty good. So it all fades on and then it all fades out together. And if we wanted that to be longer, all we'd have to do is drag these to be longer. They'll stay on and then fade out together. All right, any questions on that one?
Somebody did just say they weren't 100% sure about how you did the whole fading thing and then how you split them up. And so I don't know if you just want to like quick recap that. And then we've got a couple of other questions that we'll see if we can get to in just a second. Sure.
Okay, so for the fading, I chose to use behaviors because I love behaviors. They're pretty easy. They make it look good automatically, and so that's what I chose to use. So, for example, for this first section, so there were originally just these 2 lines, these 2 images, and I chose to split them up using the S key again, split, so that the behavior would only apply to each individual section. And I split before I added the behavior. Otherwise, Camtasia doesn't know which one you want the behavior applied to, how you want it. Do you want it to start in this one and end in this one? So it's better to split before, then apply the behavior. The behavior I chose was just this simple fade. And because it's an image, it fades it all together. If it was text, I would have had tons of options for behaviors. I could have had it fade from left to right, or from center to out, or from top to bottom. There are all kinds of different fading options. But since it's an object, just an image, it just faded the whole thing together, and you can see it faded on and off because that was one section. So these 2, the behavior was to fade on and fade off, so it faded on and then off. And then the next section faded on again and then off again. But because it was longer, it goes a little bit slower. And then this one's really long, so it fades on nice and slow and then sits until, because I had the behavior set to nothing during, I could make it do, I don't know, I could make it jump. I want to see that nightmare. Let's see. Fades on and then starts to bounce. We'll use that later. We're not going to use that on this one. That's a bad choice. During will be set to off. And then out, again, is another linear fade, and it matches the outline. Did that answer your question? I hope so.
Hope so. Somebody was wondering why behaviors over transitions.
Again, it'll come down to, for me, it's a preference thing. If it's text, I'm almost always using behaviors because I have so many more options. Here's an example. So we'll have this have some text that we'll put it up here. Pops on, we'll have it just say eLearning Brothers, because nothing wrong with some shameless self-marketing. Put a behavior on it. Let's say it's the fly-in behavior. And by default, this is how it comes in. Big letters across the front. Looks really fancy. You can't do that with any of the transitions. And you'll notice it came left to right. I could come and say, as a text, I want it to come in from center to out. So instead, it will look like this. Start with the G, the most important letter, and then come together. Other options as well. Diagonal left. Let's see what that one looks like. We'll just scroll here a little bit. Interesting. So again, for me, it was a preference thing. It felt a little bit more automatic. I use behaviors all the time with text, so it feels natural to just live in the behaviors section.
When you're using behaviors with images instead of text, I mean, is there like a different set that's available, or is it just kind of the effect kind of plays out a little bit differently? Is that
all
really
the same ones? So if I was to apply this explode to this bottom yellow block, zoom in a little. Instead, implode. Yeah, we'll try implode. For in, this is what it looks like. It just flies it in as one piece because there's not multiple pieces for it to work with. So definitely not as exciting. The way it translates is it treats it as if there was only one letter and then does the best it can. A pop-up is a little bit easier. Fade in drifting could work a little bit better too. Maybe, yeah, it kind of rotates it into place and has it land nice and pretty, but they're all the same. I mean, between images, objects, and whereas your behavior options are the same. Any other questions?
We've got a few that we might save for the end.
Okay. I'm just going to consolidate my timeline a little bit. I've got floating items that aren't stacked. That drives me nuts, unless it's audio, because then I like to separate that. So I'm just going to consolidate that. All right, this last one will be a lower third image. This is what it looks like when it's done. And we'll put it down here. And then the lower third can be as simple as, putting a text box right here. Say eLearning Brothers again, but spelled correctly. Okay. Now we're not going to really go over it, but I can easily say I want to use my ELB theme for this item, and that changes the colors, changes the font. I can even come into the color palette and say I want the ELB color palette, and now I can choose orange, or I can choose something else. There we go. ELB blue or an ELB gray. Another cool thing that came with the later versions of Camtasia. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like in the end, except that we will have way more to animate than just this one image to move around and bring about. So let's get building. I'm just going to put that here, get rid of the call out, bring in all of my pieces. There's quite a few here. And start building from the back up. So first of all is this large purple icon or circle. Put that there. Next we'll put the clipboard just right here. Put that kind of in the center. Another one downside, and you guys have noticed it, is that as you have to rebuild these, they don't always line up perfectly. So you'll take a little bit of finagling to make those work. All right, let's put the paper on next. Now, this is something that Nick and I had a good conversation about. So when he first sent it to me, this is how the clipboard came. And I put the paper and centered it on the clipboard and realized it was not clipped on. So I had the choice to either try to cheat it by just dragging it down and saying, my viewer will accept that. But Nick is a perfectionist, which is why we keep him around. So he sent me just the clip for me to then put on top again. Right there, so it goes over the paper. Looks pretty good. Next, we'll put, I'm going to put the bubbles on next. No, yeah, we'll put the bubbles on next. So there's a yellow bubble over here. There's another yellow bubble down here. There's another yellow bubble down here. I only really need the one because I can edit the size in Camtasia. Again, I'm going to hold down the control key and shrink this yellow bubble. Take this one and shrink it down a little bit as well so they're not all the exact same size. There we go. Where's the other stuff? I'm going to pull it up on my other screen, everybody, just so I can build it a little faster. Okay, then we've got this white bubble that goes here. Blue bubble comes down here. A blue bubble up here. And it looks like I forgot another yellow bubble that's really small right up here. Holding down control again, and oh my goodness, we're going to have to zoom way in to make it easy. Or I can just come in here and say this 25%. There, that's nice and small. Put it right there. We'll just come back to fit. I zoomed. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty close. Definitely not spot on, but it's close enough for our needs right now. Get rid of the original. And now all we have to worry about is the check marks. But before we worry about the check marks, I'm going to move this all down to where it's going to live, which will be down here. Holding down the control key doesn't help, not here. Okay, place it there, and now we want the check marks. Nope, you know what? I'm going to leave the check marks way for last. We're going to do everything else first. The paper and the clip and the board I have now as separate items, and they look great. And Nick went to extra effort to make sure that they looked great that way. However, for my purposes, I'm not thinking of separating them. No, we'll separate them. We'll bring the paper straight down. Whoops, I forgot to put my animations on. So we're going to put, here's the clip, the paper, and the board. We'll grab a animation, a custom animation, stick it on here, and we're going to want them all to start in different places. So the paper is going to start straight down, so it will slide into the board. The board and the clip are going to start straight out to the left. So now as those come in, use the caret keys again, they slide and click into each other there. Looks pretty good. And so now that those three are done, I'm going to set them aside. Now with circles and bubbles and symmetrical items, what I have found personally, what I prefer is to give them the same animation that we gave to those waypoints. So they will pop up out of nothing and then appear and then fade out in the same way. So I'm going to select all of my bubbles, give them all the same behavior, which was a scaling behavior, and have them all spring in. So how does that look? We spring in, looks fine, and then they spring out. That looks good. I'm going to move over, zooming in a little bit so we can see that bigger. Now the main whitish grayish bubble popped really, really big, way bigger than I probably wanted it to. So I'm just going to select it. So I'm only editing its behavior. I'm going to increase the tension so it doesn't have so much space to bounce around. So it still bubbles. You can see that it still is popping and bouncing into place, but it's not encompassing all of my surrounding bubbles. And then they'll all fade out at the same time. And I know this is going to take more time, so I'm going to highlight all of them and drag them out a little bit longer. Now for these top bubbles, the smaller bouncy bubbles, I actually do want them to do something while they're on the screen. So I'm going to come into during, and let's do the jump one. We saw that in action earlier. So as they come in, let's zoom in so you can see a little bit better. They'll animate in, and then, yep, you saw them all bounce at the same time. So they bounce up and then back down, and they'll do that a couple times throughout the sequence. But I don't want them to all bounce in synchronous. So I'm actually going to select some at random, this yellow one, and then that smaller one, holding down the control key or the shift key would also work. To select, nope, I don't want that big one. I want this. So these three yellow ones, are going to bounce at the same rate. I can change the tension. I can make them so that they fade on at a little bit of a different pace, which might be the easiest way. And that might look a little bit better too, so that not everything's popping up at the same time. And yep, you saw that they didn't bounce in sync. So the main bigger ones bounce right there, and then the smaller ones follow right there. And we can do that again with, let's take these two blue ones and we'll make them come on even later. So they all fade. Yeah, that looks fun, nice and bubbly. They don't all bounce at identical times. That's not so bad. Okay, so now to put those all together, we're going to highlight all of my little bubbles. Again, holding down the Shift key. And I'm just going to group them. No, I'm not. I can't group them because yeah. I will not group the bottom one. I will group the top ones. I don't want to mess up the layers. I don't want to take a chance that something will accidentally be covered by something that shouldn't be covered. Now my my clipboard can animate on top of that, but I do want to make sure that it doesn't come on until the bottom gray circle is at least at max size, which is right there. And it looks like I guessed correctly. So then it slides into place. Now we have a couple other items to animate on. Nothing that you've seen here is new based off of the two items that we've built here in the past, but I'm going to try something a little bit different. But before I move on, any questions about what I've done here?
Just one actually pertaining to what you're specifically doing here. At least it's more just kind of some of your timeline magic that you're working. A lot of people seeing that you're moving pretty quickly through a lot of this.
Such a habit.
I know. But how is it that you get rid of the gaps between items in your timeline? Like, it seemed pretty fast. Is it mostly just kind of a drag?
So if there's something like this?
Yeah, and you wanted to say like the left to right space that's in there.
Oh, the left to right space.
Yeah.
There's a trick I've been using for a little while. So if I didn't want there to be space between these two, I can either highlight the whole thing and move it over. But if I've got 40 tracks deep, that's going to take a long time to just highlight them all. I can instead take my timeline, take it to the beginning of where I want it, or my scrubber, take it to the beginning of where I want it to end, and then drag just the red flag to the end here, and then hit Control X or Control Cut. It'll cut that empty space out and shrink everything over. And I got a warning, hey, nothing was copied to the clipboard. That was all empty space. Thanks, Camtasia.
Good.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, so that was probably the big one that actually is pertaining to what's going on here. But if you have some time for some extra questions, kind of.
Let me zip through this one last really cool thing. I'll try to go fast, slowish for y'all.
Not fast, but not too fast.
Yeah, okay, so now that everything is on the timeline, I'm going to highlight it all and drag it out a little bit longer and make sure that that covered everything. Yep, that covered everything. Okay, so right as my clipboard is on board, I have I'll drag this over so you can see it. I've got check marks and text that needs to come onto the screen. Again, we only have one check mark and one box because we can use that check mark twice. So I'll just position those where they need to go. This check mark goes there. Next is the box. Here's the box. Goes right there, and then another check box. And the reason I did those in that order, by the way, is because then it puts them on the timeline in that order. So this is the top, this is the middle, this is the bottom. It's weird to build that way, to know that as it's coming up from top to bottom on the screen, on the timeline it's going from bottom to top. You'll get in the habit of doing that though, because it'll make sense. It'll work better. Okay, now I want my top check mark to come on the screen first, then my brown check box to come on next. So I'm going to move that over here, and then the green one over here. Now I'm actually fine with them just popping up at the party like that. I don't think that looks too bad. It's the text that's going to come on in more of a fancy way. So right after it pops on the bottom green check mark, the green text is going to pop up. Where the heck is that green text? There it is. Okay. Green text is going to pop up next to the green check mark, and we'll get it centered on the check mark, maybe. There we go. And then I'll arrow key it over onto the paper. right there. How's that look? Not bad. Okay, and again that lines up so it pops on at the same time as the green check mark. Next, we're going to go to the brown square and the brown text. Put that on centered. Excuse me. Brown text there. And then the green text again for the bottom check mark. And again, it is animating on at the same time as the check mark. There, perfectly lined up. But we want those to animate differently. So here's what we're going to do. This top green section, we're going to stick an animation on it, custom animation. And when it starts here at the beginning, we're going to hit the crop button here where it's going to start, and it's going to start cropped all the way to the left. All the way gone. There's a tiny sliver. So now, the way that looks, remember we're just looking at the top one, just the top checkbox and text. So the checkbox pops up, and then the text animates on like that. It comes uncropped, and that looks pretty neat, I think. What we can do, I'm going to delete that again. We're going to highlight all three of these because we want them all to have the same type of animation. Put that animation on all three, come to the beginning, and oh no, it stayed cropped. This first one stayed cropped. Come on, guys. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to highlight all three, use the crop, and crop all three of them down to a sliver. And now I just have to move the animation to when they come in, and that way they will animate in order. So the paper slides into the board, first checkbox pops up. What is going on? Oh, it's finishing. That's right. This one is finishing. Its default state came out to be cropped. So I just need to change its end state to be uncropped. There we go. So now it'll work. Fills in, checkbox with the text, box with the text, checkbox with the text, and the bubbles aren't all popping at the exact same time. They're similar times. All right. And then again, we want them all to kind of end at the same time. So we'll just pull this down, pull this down, pull this down, this down, and then, well, we'll worry about those in a second. So these can just disappear. I think that's, I mean, you could animate them out. It's a little bit faster to just do that. And then to have, as soon as they are cleared, we're going to hit the restore animation and stick it on the clipboard. Oh, I missed one. Restore. So what that does is it just puts it back where it started. So as soon as the text is off the screen, which is right there, these papers can animate off. And then again, they don't have to live on after they've animated off. And these bubbles can go away as well. The problem with just shrinking the length of this is that sometimes the behavior isn't realizing that it's supposed to end too on the inside. It did on this case because the group extended their endings, so they just know that they're all going to end at the end of the group. But if you have one or two of these that is longer or shorter than the group ending, it's going to have a hard time knowing that it's time to leave, like some people at a party. All right, so here we go. So it scrolls away, the text disappears. Oh, those are some big jumps. Okay, the text disappears, that paper goes away, and the bubbles vanish. Okay, that was it. That was the cool part. The text getting cropped. That was the whole magic.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Well, so kind of related to that, somebody was wondering, is there no like wipe animation? Because, you know, like PowerPoint has kind of like a wipe on, which is essentially what you were doing with that cropping.
There's wipes as transitions.
Okay.
But they don't work great. Like there's a page roll and a ripple and turn, slide left, slide right. I have found that crop gives me way more control. I just use crop.
Cool. And then somebody wanting just a little bit more specific. Where did the restore action come from? Was that a behavior or was that a transition?
That is in animations.
It's in animations.
There's custom, and then right next to it is restore.
Okay.
I use that one like crazy too.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So we have a ton of other questions, but a lot of them kind of just related to stuff outside of maybe what we're trying to cover today. But I think probably maybe the most important one to cover is if you're trying to learn more about what Camtasia can do, where are some of the best places to get started on doing that, and maybe understanding designing, not even maybe just in Camtasia, but just kind of with video in general, or specifically within Camtasia?
So I can send out a bunch of links in an email in a couple of minutes to everybody who registered for this. I've put together blogs for the last 3 years about how to use Camtasia and video best practices. Those live on eLearningBrothers.com. You can find a lot there. We did this huge interactive video that you can find on our About page, eLearningBrothers.com/about, or you can go into the sections. And in there, it's a completely interactive video. And then I also wrote a blog series, there's 12 of them, about each step of developing that interactive video. So you can check that out. I can include that as well. Cool. TechSmith also has phenomenal forums. If you ever have questions there, you can go to TechSmith's Camtasia forums. I would highly suggest, I mean, if you're ready to dive into Camtasia, TechSmith's a great spot. And I'm always happy to answer questions you guys have as well.
Awesome. Somebody is requesting to see if we can see the whole thing again, regular speed. We can try, but GoToWebinar sometimes doesn't play nice.
Yeah, it captures at like 5 frames per second. So we'll see. Here we go. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Whoa, and not smack my microphone. All right. I don't know why I'm being quiet. There's no sound.
It's just like,
pop in and fade up. Let's flicker in. Those could have been longer now in retrospect. It lives on the screen for long enough. It bubbles up, text rolls out, bubbles jump at different times and pop back down. So that's kind of the whole thing. I can send also in the email, I'll put a video link to this exported so you guys can watch it a little bit bigger and smoother.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Like 1 minute. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that we've got enough time to cover some of these other ones. So just know that we are going to take all of the questions from that you guys have asked. We'll try to go through it and see if we can write up some answers for you guys in the webinar recap a little bit later.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to take a screenshot real quick just so I make sure we cover it. It'll be good. All right, that's all I had. Normally, I would tell you guys to register for ELBX Live, but that has happened. So check out our other templates and stuff. You can grab a free trial if you want at eLearningBrothers.com. There's a little section in the top right corner called Free Trial. Try some of our stock assets and try breaking these down yourself. Or we built a ton of Camtasia templates that work in Camtasia 9 and subsequent versions, so you can try those as well. Mm-hmm.
Icons library, like we were talking about a little bit earlier.
I love the icon library. I didn't really use any of them here, but they are great because you can download them. If you like them as they are, you can download them as a PNG, or you can start to edit those out as EPSs or SVG. So they're super great. Thanks, everybody.